I'm not Dartmoor today. I'm actually not far away. I'm on the coast, and I've come down here to look for some seaweed. And as you can see behind me, there's lots and lots of seaweed, but it's not. It's mostly the. I'll find a piece here. It's mostly this stuff, which is not so tasty, which is bladderwrack. So I'm not going to be harvesting that. But if I bring you down and we have a look down here. So this feathery stuff is okay, but this is much tastier. And when you're picking seaweed, it's always preferable to pull it from the side, and then you don't actually pull out any of the roots, because what you want to do is to allow it to regrow. And this stuff is like a red sea lettuce, but this is actually my favorite one is this stuff here, which I'll just show you. This is a green sea lettuce, which is absolutely delicious, and I'm going to be drying that later and having some dish will be created from that. So from a lovely sunny day here in the cold waters that I'm currently standing in or kneeling in, I will see you later, and thank you for your listening right now. Welcome back. And I'm at the house now, and I'm dealing with the seaweed. So if you remember, we got lots of this lovely stuff, and this is the sea lettuce. And what I'm doing is I'm laying it all out here, as you can see, on this tray. And what I'm doing is really just opening up all the different bits of seaweed so that when it dries, it's going to dry with this wonderful kind of shape to them, which is really, I do that because sometimes I like to use them, or you like to use the seaweed decoratively. In a dish, and if it dries that way, then it'll look nicer. So, and if I don't, it's fine. I can still crumble it up and use it as a, just sprinkle it over food, and that's fine as well. But at least I've done it in the first instance, so I can make the decision later how I'm going to present it. So now I've got here a whole tray, and I've got some of the red seaweed here as well that's already laid out. And what I'm going to do is, you see behind me I've got our trusty old Arga here, and in the bottom part of the Arga there's an area where you can keep dishes and things just warm, and it's around about 70 degrees centigrade. And I'm going to put the seaweed in there, and it will be done really only in a couple of hours. It'll have dried out, but I tend to leave it in for a bit longer just to make sure it's extra dried out. And that's all you really need to do. And some people use dehydrators. I don't have any fancy technology like that. I find the Arga works really well for me. And I imagine, and I haven't tried it, but you could do this with an oven at home. Just put it in at a low temperature. As I said, our oven, or the bottom of the oven here, the Arga here, is only 70 degrees centigrade. So it's not super hot. So yeah, you can do that, and you just pop that in. Leave it for 2 hours or overnight, and come back to it and see how it goes. And that's it. Hi there. So we've got the stuff out of the oven. We've got the lovely seaweed out of the oven, and as you can see, it's shrunk, and it has just made these wonderful kind of beautiful shapes. And this is one of the reasons why I wanted to lay things out in the way that I did. I mean, there's even, look at that. How fun is that? And all I'm going to do now is just put them into jars, and I will keep them for whenever I want to use them. I'm keeping them in big pieces because I said I like to be able to decorate with them and use them creatively. But they will just crush down, as you can see, into a fine powder. I don't know if you could see that. I'll do another piece here. It just crushes down into a lovely fine powder, which you can use in a myriad of different ways, in soups and things like that, or as just seasonings on top of food. Yeah, so that's all going to be good to use at any point. I actually found that this dried within about an hour, so it was perfectly fine to take out of the oven after an hour. But I left it in for about 4 or 5 hours, just to make absolutely sure it was totally and utterly dry. And the red seaweed is there, Look at that, isn't that beautiful? This is the Carrageen, so this is otherwise known as Irish moss or false Irish moss, and this is really good for making it's like a thickening agent. It's really good for making ice cream and so on and so forth. I don't use it very much, but I like to have a little bit around to use, but it's so decorative as well. I mean, the little trees, I mean, isn't that super fun? So yeah, so that's all good. That's all going to go and get put away, and oh, it smells so good. And and the difference, wow, good. The difference between eating seaweed when it's still fresh and eating it when it's dry, there are no ways to compare it. It is the flavour absolutely comes out in the drying process. So you've got this wonderful, intense taste of the ocean. Beautiful. Okay, so that's it for now. And yeah, what I wanted to share with you now is really something I make a lot, and it's a white sauce. And the only difference with this one is that I'm making it with seaweed. And it's going to be with some of that lovely seaweed we collected a few days ago. And what I'm doing is I've got my measuring beaker out. Now, I'll tell you this, right from the get-go, I do not do an awful lot of measuring. A lot of my creations are really just, possibly just from being a chef for so long, I just tend to throw things together. And I kind of encourage everybody to do that. This is how I learn. I didn't learn from a cookery book. I just learned by throwing things together, creating things that suited my taste, and then sharing it with other people. The only things to really take note of are the kind of ingredients that go in, and then you decide a little bit about the proportions. But let's get going. So we've got this jug here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a whole load of almond milk, and as it happens, I'm adding about 150 milliliters of milk there, or almond milk. And then to that I am going to add, and I'm a little bit of a fan of drying things. So I'm adding some dried garlic. Now of course you can use fresh, there's no reason not to. It's just I like to do this because I make it so often, and it's just nice and easy and simple. When everything's dried and ground, I can just go to it and I can cook with it, and it's just dead simple. So that's the garlic. So I've used about a teaspoon. I've got a little wooden teaspoon. This is my measure for pretty much everything. And I can't remember where I got this old spoon from, but I use it all over the place for my measurements. And again, because I'm using this spoon all the time for doing my 1 teaspoon of this or half a teaspoon of that, I know what my measure is. I know what my quantity is. So once you've got a spoon that you like, stick to it and use that as the basis for proportioning how you're going to handle your ingredients. So I've done that with the garlic, and now I'm going to do exactly the same with onion. And this time a little bit more. That's a heaped teaspoon of dried onion powder. And then I'm using about a half teaspoon of dried mustard powder. And what else have we got here? We've got about a quarter of a teaspoon of dried and ground thyme. And then I've got some, this is about, again, a little bit about a quarter of a teaspoon of ground sumac berries. So that goes in there as well. And then I've just got some dried dill, and I'm using just slightly under a quarter of a teaspoon of dried dill weed. Then it goes on. Then I've got some white pepper. I always like to use white pepper in a white sauce. It just I think believes it just tastes so much better that way. And I'm doing about just a little over a quarter of a teaspoon of that, because I like it nice and peppery. And then, and this is great, you see, I've not actually done any cooking yet. All I've done is add a bunch of ingredients together. And then we've got some corn flour, and I've adding, there's a nice heaped teaspoon of that. That goes in. And then that's pretty much it. I'm just going to zhush all that up. So we'll just it all up together with a whisk. And it's all nice and blended. And then I add this to my little old saucepan here, so that all goes into that. And then I just put it on the agar on a medium heat, and just I'll keep whisking it and keep that going, and until that starts thickening up. In the meantime, I've got seaweed. So this is all the lovely dried seaweed we had before, and you remember I said, oh, let's keep some pieces in nice big chunks so you can decorate with them and things like that. All I'm doing with this is actually I'm obliterating it. So I'm grinding it down in my hands, because what I want it to be is really like powdery. And I've actually been doing that in my hands. So I've ground it down a bit in my hands, and now I'm going to get the mortar and pestle out and just continue that process off. So just get it a little bit as ground as possible, really, because you want it, the smaller you get it, you see more flavour gets into the actual sauce. So that will actually do me. And so if I show you that, so you can see there's some big bits in there as well, but really that doesn't matter. So I'm mixing that up again and do a load more. So I've actually, the amount that I've used, as you can see, so I've used roughly twice that amount to make this white seaweed sauce. So it's gone in here into the mortar and pestle, and I'm bashing it away here like a mad thing, going crazy. Mash all that up really nicely all the time, keeping an eye on the sauce that's slowly warming up on the agar here. So that's that done. So I will now, here we go, pour the rest of that in. Lovely jubbly. Bit more of a mix, and then I'm going to add just a little bit of salt, and I'll go back to my friendly neighbourhood spoon, and I will use just about a half teaspoon of salt go into that, and another mix, and put to one side. And then I've got some nice olive oil, which I'm putting in right at the very end once everything's kind of cooked through, because I want the olive oil to be mixed in, but I don't want it overly cooked. I like it when there's a little bit of oil on the surface. So this is thickening up nicely. A bit more of a stir. Now the thing is with these white sauces, like it's pretty much done, is that you really kind of want it to all the different flavours to come out, and so it's always best to make it in advance and come back to it a bit later. And so I've made this up now, and if I get a spoon, I'll just show you. Well, I can show you with this actually, the whisk. So you can see it's just a little bit gloopy. It's made, again, without tipping everything everywhere, of course. If you can see, it's just gone into a nice mix. So that's that done, and then I'm going to pour the olive oil on the top, and there it goes. And then I'm going to bring you down so you can have a look and see what's been going on in this pot down here. So you can see it's bubbling away. The olive oil is all gorgeously on the surface there. You can see a little bit better the texture of the sauce itself. And that, my friends, is that. And now all that remains to happen really is for me to put my finger in and taste it. Tastes good to me. So that's one of the things that you can do with seaweed. Make a lovely seaweed white sauce, and you know, as I said at the very beginning, make it to your own, how you like it to taste. And once you're actually serving it like this, I love to mix in with pasta, and I'll be mixing it in with pasta. And then I will put pieces of broken seaweed on the top of the dried seaweed on top for decoration. And the other thing you can do with this sauce, it goes really well, is guess what? Dried mushroom powder. I use porcini mushrooms and they taste fabulous with it. I can't tell you how good they taste. Mushrooms in a white sauce and pasta, perfect. So that's it from me. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it's been of some use. It's only the second attempt at doing a cookery video, so give me your feedback, tell me what works and what doesn't work, And yeah, all that remains for me to say is thank you and goodbye. Bye-bye.